So back in the 1970s, lawmakers tried to tackle the rising cost of auto insurance by creating a no-fault system. And basically that means that you get paid by your insurer regardless of whether or not you caused an accident. This was successful to a point. But now legislators and law enforcement officials say that criminals are gaming the system to the tune of $250 million last year alone. And at the state capitol, a bill has been introduced to reform the system and also crack down on the insurance fraud. Tonight, I'm joined by an advocate who is pushing for this reform. Charles Hines is the Brooklyn District Attorney. He traveled to Albany today to lobby for the bill. Welcome. It's good to see you.
Good to see you.
This actually, the numbers to me seem a little unbelievable. It's huge. 14,625 reports of suspected health-related fraud just to the state insurance department.
Right.
So what percentage of what you see in Brooklyn is related to this?
I can't calculate it. So it's literally incalculable. And you know, one of the problems we're dealing with is we know who the main ganaps are. We know the medical mills are the people who run this operation. They hire runners. The runners in turn hire Joe Citizen as a jump-in. They stage an accident. Joe Citizen goes to the mill, sits for a few minutes. They write some paperwork up, and the claim goes in. Of course, the insurance, they have 45 days to pass along the claim, which is the year of the computer. Is nuts. The insurance company has to pay in 30 days, and that was a good thing. And no one wanted the insurance companies to sit on claims. Right. The problem is it's used to a disadvantage because there are many indicators of fraudulent claims, and the insurance companies frankly need more, and I need as a prosecutor more time to review the indicia of the fraud. So just to finish the point, the claim goes in, the claim is paid. The runner gets his piece. The runner then hands $100 or $200 to Joe Citizen. That's how it works.
Okay, but look, I mean, I don't want to be too, I don't want to disclose too much, but I've had my share of fender benders in the past, a couple of them, right? I am not engaging, I promise you, or I would be confessing, it would be a problem. I am not engaging in fraud.
Now that I know you're living in Brooklyn, you have a real problem with that.
But seriously, how do you know when something's real and what are those indicators of fraud?
Well, I mean, to begin with, you'll have people go to the medical mill with phony identification. Remarkably, because the criminal mind is always fun. I always say, the easiest thing I do is put people in jail because the people I'm contesting are not very bright. They give a phony name, and then they write their correct contact number, phone number.
Yeah, that's not smart.
So we check on it. We come up with the phony claim or the phony person. We go to him, and he confesses, and then he gives us information about the runner. The problem is, it's a felony for a first-time offense for someone who is, as I say, Joe Citizen making $100.
That's low.
Very low, sure. Yeah. So no one's going to send that person to jail. The runner is worse because he is really the main guy, the main cog in this scam, and it's a misdemeanor for him to solicit. That's wrong, because we ask him to cooperate against the mill, and he tells us to go take a hike. So increasing the penalties will be helpful, and as we discussed, I don't get up every morning looking to throw, first offenders in prison. That's not what I do. But certainly, if it's repeated a number of times, then someone ought to pay a penalty.
Yeah, I don't actually think that people understand. The problem here is that New York has the third highest cost of car insurance in the nation.
Yeah, and we all pay.
Right. So you guys are actually, the people who are behind this effort are calling it a fraud tax, essentially. That honest people, even myself, who have had a few fender benders and who need insurance and use it for what it was created to do, are actually paying several $100s more a year because of people who are gaming the system.
And if we could convince the average citizen that it's not worth $100 or $200 to run the risk going to Rikers Island for 30 days, we could substantially cut into it. If we're able to jam up a runner with a serious felony and have that runner cooperate against the mill, we could shut this thing down in a relatively short period of time.
So what you're asking for is increased penalty. That's one of the things.
Increased penalty, enlarge the time within which the insurance company and we can investigate. It should be 30 days. So what the legislation does is, where the insurance company asserts an objection to the claim, it's 30 days plus. And for every month over a certain period, there's a 2% surcharge against the insurance company. So there's an incentive for the insurance company to pay up a legitimate claim and not to jump to a conclusion that there's a phony claim.
And you also want to decertify medical providers who commit insurance fraud.
You got to catch them first. That's
well,
the problem.
Right, okay,
yeah.
But they're in on this in some cases, right?
No, Liz, they started. I mean, that's their business. They're the ones who go out and hire the runners, and the runners in turn hire the jumpers, or the private citizens. So we got to get them. And as I said, I've said often, 10 years ago, it was shooting fish in a barrel. We'd send our financial investigators in, we'd grab their books and records, and in a very short time we could create a case and then, you know, force them into restitution or forfeiture. But without the you know, going up the chain with the runner or with a citizen, we go nowhere.
You know, I actually want to ask you, as I was looking at doing some research for this, I came across a report that it said when Eliot Spitzer was Attorney General, the governor, then George Pataki, actually created a fraud unit, empowered the Attorney General to go after this at the state level. First of all, do you have any idea if that still exists? Because I do not know.
No idea.
Is that something that you think would be helpful if, in fact, we were combating this from the top down instead of? I know I'm asking you to give away some of your power. I'm not technically asking you that.
I've been a state special prosecutor twice for Medicaid fraud and for corruption.
Right.
And when I recommended to Governor Cuomo, the first Governor Cuomo, that he do away with the corruption office, I said, we have all the resources to do it. We just got to get lucky. And I have gotten lucky. I mean, you know, some would question the luck of indicting your county chairman and almost being thrown out of office, which is, they nearly did that in 2005. But I've prosecuted more public officials than anybody in the state's history, judges, assembly members, and so we have the wherewithal, we have the resources. We could use more money, obviously, but you know, we can do the job. So it doesn't have to be a statewide effort.
But this is, of course, a statewide problem.
Sure, and every one of my colleagues throughout the state could do the same job.
So my question then is, what's the holdup? I mean, we've been talking about the high cost of insurance and the high incidence of fraud in New York for years. Is there some reason? I mean, it seems pretty logical. So what's the issue?
Look, I think, to be fair, someone who would say the reason we have the 30-day rule is not to screw, you know, the poor guy at the lower end of the totem pole, you know, who wants their money back fast, and they're generally low-end people, not a lot of resources, so they need the money.
Right.
And that's perfectly understandable. But when you know there's a systemic problem in the industry, you cannot continue to claim that you're doing this for the right reason, because you're not.
Consumer protection, you mean?
Yeah. Right.
Okay. Well, DA, I want to thank you very much for being here.
Good to be with you.
It's good to see
you.
I'm
happy to hear you're a Brooklyn person.
Well, sometimes.
Yeah, good.